My so-called best friend spent years humiliating me in front of my boyfriend while pretending to be one of the guys, so I destroyed her entire reputation in front of everyone she ever tried to impress. I probably know Tyler better than she does. Brielle's voice cut through my own living room like a blade through wet paper. At least I actually pay attention to him. The trivia card in my hand went still. 12 people stopped talking at once. Somewhere behind me, ice clinked against a glass, and then nothing. Tyler's arm, which had been resting easy around my waist all night, went rigid against my hip. I felt it before I heard him speak. He turned toward her slowly. His face wasn't soft anymore. I'd seen Tyler annoyed before. I'd seen him tired, stressed, distracted. I had never seen him look at someone the way he looked at Brielle in that moment, like he was finally reading a label he should have read 2 years ago. "You don't know me at all," he said. His voice was calm. That was the part that made it land so hard. "What you've done to her for months isn't funny. It isn't cute. I'm done pretending it is." Brielle laughed, but it came out thin, the kind of laugh that's already looking for an exit. "I was just joking. God, can nobody take a joke anymore? Real friends don't spend 2 years putting down their friend's girlfriend," Tyler said. He didn't raise his voice once. "If you can't treat her with basic respect, you're not welcome around us again." Her eyes filled fast. She grabbed her jacket off the back of a kitchen chair and walked out so quickly she clipped the door frame with her shoulder. I heard her crying all the way down the stairwell of my own apartment building. The front door downstairs slammed hard enough that the framed photo of Tyler and me from Maddie's wedding rattled against the wall behind it. Satisfaction hit me first. Sharp, hot, almost embarrassing in how good it felt. Then something colder followed right behind it, because when I turned around, half the room wasn't looking at the door Brielle had just disappeared through. They were looking at me. I was 24 that fall, living in a one-bedroom off Colfax in Denver, with a paralegal job I'd had for 2 years and a boyfriend I'd had for 3. Tyler and I met at a coffee shop near the courthouse during my first month at the firm, back when I still wore blazers 2 sizes too big and ordered drip coffee because I didn't know what else to ask for. He worked in software 2 buildings over. He liked old westerns and terrible puns, and he remembered every single time that I took my coffee with oat milk, not regular. Small things. I built a lot of trust on small things like that. Brielle, I'd known longer. We'd been roommates freshman year at CU Boulder, the kind of randomly assigned pairing that either becomes a war or a friendship, and ours became a friendship, or what I called one, for 6 years. She was funny in a way that filled a room. She could make a dead party feel alive in 10 minutes. For most of college, I loved that about her. I didn't notice, not really, how often the energy she brought into a room came at someone else's expense. It started small, the way these things always do. Spring of our sophomore year, I'd started dating a guy named Marcus, my first real relationship. Brielle liked him too, she told me later. Though never at the time, never honestly. She used to show up to our study dates uninvited, plop down across from him, and complain that I was so serious while she was actually fun to be around. Marcus laughed it off. I laughed it off too. It lasted 4 months and ended for reasons that had nothing to do with her, or so I believed at the time. Looking back now, I think about how often he stopped texting me back the same week she'd corner him at parties to talk about how boring couple stuff was. I think about it more than I used to. The summer after Marcus, Brielle threw herself a going-away party for an internship in Austin that was supposed to last 12 weeks. She came back after 8, a month early, telling everyone she'd missed us too much to stay the whole stretch. I believed her at the time. I see it differently now. I think she'd never been good at being somewhere she wasn't the center of attention, and 8 weeks of being just another intern in a city where nobody knew her name had been harder on her than she could admit out loud. When she came back that August, something in her had hardened a little. The jokes got sharper. The teasing stopped feeling like teasing and started feeling like target practice, though it would take me almost 3 more years to name it that way, even to myself. By the time Tyler and I got serious, Brielle had perfected the act. She never missed a date. She'd show up uninvited to dinners, claiming Tyler had texted her because he needed a break from couple stuff, which he never had, not once. A fact I only confirmed years later when I finally thought to ask him directly. She'd squeeze herself onto the middle cushion at the movies, lean into his shoulder during the previews, and announce to no one in particular that she wasn't like other girls who got jealous over a little touching. When I ordered a salad, she'd order wings and call it real food, like I was performing for male attention by eating a vegetable. When Tyler complimented a dress I wore to his coworker's engagement party, she told him she could never wear something so high maintenance, then did a cartwheel in the parking lot in her gym shorts to prove her point, laughing the whole way down. She told him over and over how lucky he was to have a girlfriend who didn't cry over everything, unlike his actual girlfriend. I never cried in front of Tyler, not once, in 3 years. But she built that story brick by brick, in front of him, in front of our friends, until people actually started to believe it, until my own mother, at Easter, asked me out of nowhere if I was doing okay emotionally. I didn't even know what to say to that. I just said yes and changed the subject, the way I'd learned to do with almost everything about Brielle. The clearest early warning came at Tyler's 26th birthday, a Friday night in March at a bar called The Hollow downtown. I'd planned most of it myself, booked the back room, ordered a cake from the bakery 2 blocks from my apartment because Tyler had mentioned once, in passing, months earlier, that he liked their lemon cake more than chocolate. I remembered. I always remembered. Brielle arrived 40 minutes late holding 2 concert tickets, just for her and Tyler, to a band he'd mentioned liking on a Tuesday 3 weeks before. Girlfriends never appreciate good music music anyway, she said, loud enough that the whole back room heard it over the music. Then she sat down on his lap because, she said, all the chairs were taken. There were 6 empty chairs along the back wall. I counted them later that night, lying awake, like counting them would prove something to someone. When I finally got a moment to hand Tyler my gift, a watch I'd had engraved with our anniversary date inside the band, Brielle grabbed it out of my hands before he could even open it. She tore the paper herself and held the watch up to the light, unimpressed. Boring, she announced, compared to an actual experience with someone fun. Then she challenged the table to shots, laughing when I sipped my wine instead, calling me a basic girl who can't handle real alcohol. Tyler laughed along with the table. I don't think he meant anything by it. I don't think he noticed the pattern yet, not fully. The way you don't notice a slow leak in a tire until the day it's flat. I should have said something that night. I told myself I would, in the car on the way home, and then I didn't, because Tyler was tired and happy and humming along to the radio, and I didn't want to be the girlfriend who ruined his birthday by bringing up his friend. That was always the trap. Every single time speaking up would have made me the problem, not her. So I stayed quiet. For 2 more years, I stayed quiet. There was a weekend trip to Steamboat Springs that spring. 6 of us renting a cabin off Highway 40 for 2 nights that I still think about more than I'd like to. Brielle had booked herself into the room next to Tyler's and mine, separated by a wall so thin we could hear her hairdryer at 6 in the morning. On the second night, after a few drinks by the fire pit, she announced to the group that she and Tyler had basically the same sense of humor, unlike some people, looking directly at me when she said it. Tyler laughed, the easy laugh of someone who didn't see the knife in it. I excused myself to get more firewood and stood in the dark by the woodpile for almost 10 minutes before I trusted my face enough to go back. Nobody noticed I'd been gone that long. That was the thing about Brielle's cuts. They were precise enough that only I ever bled from them in a room full of people. There was a Friendsgiving that November, hosted at Maddie's apartment, where Brielle outdid even her own standards. Tyler had spent 2 days smoking a brisket for the table, something he was genuinely proud of, the kind of project he only took on for people he cared about. Brielle tasted it, made a face for the whole table to see, and announced that her ex-boyfriend's mother made actual barbecue, the kind that didn't need a recipe card. Tyler's face fell for just a second before he covered it with a laugh. I watched him do that more and more as the months went on, absorb a hit and recover fast enough that nobody else clocked it. Later that night, doing dishes together in Maddie's kitchen, he admitted quietly that her comment had stung more than he expected. It was the first time he'd said anything like that to me about her, unprompted. I filed it away and said nothing, the way I'd learned to file everything away by then. I tried, eventually, to set a boundary on my own. It didn't go well. It was a Tuesday in late August, almost a year after that birthday, when I finally said something to her directly, alone, no audience to perform for. We were at her apartment, ostensibly for a movie night that had been her idea, and I told her as evenly as I could that the comments about my body, my drink choices, my clothes, needed to stop. That the way she treated Tyler like her property in front of me needed to stop. Give me an example, she said, arms crossed, before I'd even finished. So I gave her several. The wings comment, the cartwheel at the engagement party, the lap, the concert tickets, the watch she'd ripped open like it was hers to judge. She waved each one off as I named it, calling them jokes, calling me sensitive, asking at one point if I'd been reading those relationship articles again, like caring about how I was treated was a symptom of something rather than a reasonable thing to want. She didn't apologize. She didn't even pause. Wow, she said, setting down her wine glass with a click against the coffee table. I didn't realize I was supposed to walk on eggshells around you now. Then she told me I was being the exact kind of clingy, insecure girlfriend that drives men toward girls like her. She said she actually felt sorry for Tyler, stuck with someone so fragile. I left her apartment that night without finishing the conversation, because there was nowhere left for it to go. That was the night something in me went quiet, in a different way. Not hurt. Quiet. Calculating quiet. Nice had gotten me nowhere in 6 years. Nice, I decided, had just been permission. I started with Jordan, a guy from Tyler's office Brielle had been chasing for almost a year with the same pick-me routine she ran on Tyler, minus the jealousy, since she had nothing to be jealous of with Jordan, just an audience to win. She'd laugh too hard at his jokes, claim she didn't care about girly stuff, beat him, badly, on purpose I think now, at the bar trivia machine he liked, just to seem effortlessly cool. I started showing up wherever Jordan was. I laughed at his jokes, the real ones, not performed ones. I beat his high score on the trivia machine for real, the same week Brielle had bragged about losing to him, on purpose to be nice. I mentioned once, just loud enough for the right people to hear, that some girls try so hard to be one of the guys that it gets a little embarrassing to watch. Within 3 weeks, Jordan was telling people he wished more girls were chill like her, meaning me. I felt nothing close to guilty. I felt like I'd finally found the manual to a machine that had been running me over for years. It wasn't subtle, and I'd be lying if I said I cared about subtlety by that point. At a work happy hour in mid-September, I sat next to Jordan instead of across from him, ordered the same beer he ordered instead of wine, and let the conversation run long after Brielle had given up trying to insert herself into it from 2 seats away. I watched her face the whole time, the way it kept tightening every time he laughed at something I said instead of something she said. 2 weeks later, she stopped showing up to the same bar on Thursdays altogether, which told me, more than anything she could have said out loud, that the campaign was working exactly the way I'd planned it. planned it. Quick pause from the story. If you enjoy these stories, consider taking a listen to our Spotify show, linked in the description for early access to new stories in better audio quality. Now back to the video. Then came the girls' night. I planned it for a Saturday in late September, invited every woman in our friend group except Brielle, and posted the photos that night with a caption about real friends lifting each other up instead of tearing each other down. She texted me an hour later asking why she hadn't been invited. I told her plainly that it was for girls who actually liked being girls, not pick-me's who treated femininity like something to apologize for. What surprised me wasn't her reaction. It was everyone else's. Heather, who'd known Brielle even longer than I had, texted me the next morning saying she'd noticed the pattern for over a year and never knew how to bring it up. Maddie said almost the same thing. Connor, Tyler's college roommate, admitted he'd always found Brielle's guys girl act a little exhausting, but figured it wasn't his business to say so. One by one, the group started agreeing with me, like a dam breaking after years of quiet pressure no one had wanted to name out loud. It was Heather, actually, who told me something a few weeks later that changed how I understood the whole thing, though I didn't want to hear it at the time. We were getting coffee at a place near her apartment on a Thursday afternoon, just the two of us, and she mentioned, almost as an aside, stirring sugar into her cup like the words cost her nothing, that Brielle had liked Tyler first, before me, before any of it. You didn't know that, she said. It wasn't a question. I didn't. Back in our junior year, before Tyler and I had even met, Brielle had spent months trying to get close to him through mutual friends from his dorm, only to watch him fall for me instead, completely by accident. Neither of us even aware she'd had her eye on him in the first place. She never told you, Heather said, because it would have made her look pathetic, chasing a guy who didn't notice her, then watching her best friend land him without even trying. She paused. So she found a different way to stay close to him, through you. It was easier than admitting she'd lost. It didn't excuse anything. I want to be clear about that, because at the time, I almost let it. For a few days afterward, I found myself softening, telling myself she'd been hurting this whole time, that maybe I'd been too harsh in the months since the trivia game, that maybe the wings and the cartwheels and the concert tickets had just been a sad woman's clumsy attempt to hold on to something she'd lost before it had even started. I almost texted her. I had the message typed out one night, something short, something that would have opened a door I'd worked hard to close. I deleted it instead. Then I thought about my mother's question at Easter. I thought about 3 years of small, deliberate cuts, dressed up as jokes, designed to make me doubt myself in front of the one person whose opinion mattered most to me. Understanding where cruelty comes from doesn't make it less cruel. It just makes it sadder. The couples and singles party was already planned by the time Heather told me that. A Saturday at the end of October. My idea, my apartment, my rules. Bring a partner or come ready to mingle, I'd told everyone, including Brielle, who I invited on purpose, because some part of me wanted to see what she'd do with a clear boundary stated in advance. She walked in at 8 o'clock, dressed like she was the main event, in heels nobody else in the room had bothered with. She found Tyler within 90 seconds and tried, same as always, to wedge herself between us on the couch. He didn't move. He kept his arm around my waist and walked us both into the kitchen instead, taking my hand without asking permission first, the way he used to before I think either of us fully understood what we were navigating around her. She followed us in, complaining loudly that the whole party felt so couple-focused. Heather, refilling her cup with ice at the counter, smiled without looking up and said that was literally the point of a couples party. A few people laughed. Brielle's face went red. She grabbed the vodka off the counter and poured herself a drink, like she needed it more than she wanted it. Then came the trivia game, the one that's always been the centerpiece of our parties. Couples answering questions about each other while everyone watches and laughs. We were 3 questions in when Brielle's voice cut through the room. I probably know Tyler better than she does, she said. At least I actually pay attention to him. I've already told you what happened next. The silence. Tyler's arm going rigid. The words he said, calm and final, that ended 2 years of small humiliations in under 30 seconds. The slammed door downstairs, the picture frame rattling against the wall, and then half the room looking at me, not at the door, in a way I didn't fully understand until 2 days later. Heather called me on a Monday morning, her voice tight in a way I'd never heard from her before. You need to see what Brielle just posted, she said. I opened the app with my hands already shaking because Heather doesn't sound like that over nothing. The first slide stopped my breath hold. It wasn't a quote about fake friends, which is what I'd braced myself for. It was a screenshot. My screenshot. A text I'd sent exactly one person 18 months earlier, after a bad night and 2 glasses of wine too many, about a mistake I had never told Tyler and never planned to. A late-night conversation with an old college boyfriend. Nothing that had happened physically. Nothing I was proud of either. Words I'd typed out at 1 in the morning to Heather because I needed to say them to someone and couldn't say them to him. Heather hadn't sent it to Brielle. I knew that immediately, in my gut, before I even asked her. Heather had taken a screenshot of my message months ago to send to Maddie for advice on how to support me through it, the way friends sometimes pass things along with good intentions and no idea where they'll eventually land. Somewhere between Maddie's phone and a group chat she'd been kicked out of months later in a separate falling out, the screenshot had survived, archived in some forgotten thread, until Brielle, scrambling for anything that would hurt me back after the worst public humiliation of her adult life, found someone willing to dig it up and hand it to her. She posted it with a caption calling me a hypocrite who'd built her whole reputation on lies. Within an hour, it had 40 comments. Within 3 hours, Tyler had seen it. He called me instead of texting, which told me everything before he said a word. "Is it real?" he asked. Just that. No yelling. His voice sounded like it had at the party, calm in a way that scared me more than anger would have. I told him the truth. All of it. All. The conversation with my college boyfriend. The night it happened. Why I'd never told him. The 18 months I'd spent quietly hating myself for it while building an entirely different kind of war against someone else. I told him I understood if this changed things. I told him I was sorry, not because Brielle had exposed it, but because I should have told him myself a long time ago, instead of letting it sit in me like something rotting. There was a long silence on the line, long enough that I thought he might hang up. "I'm not happy about it," he finally said. "I need you to know that. But I'm more upset you didn't tell me than I am about whatever happened that night. People have bad nights. People make mistakes they regret. What I can't get past as easily as finding out from a screenshot instead of from you." He paused. "I need some space. Not forever, just some space." I gave it to him. 4 days of it. The longest 4 days of that entire year. Longer somehow than the 2 years of small cruelties that had preceded them, because this silence was mine to have caused. The fallout outside our relationship moved faster than the fallout inside it. Brielle's post had been screenshotted and recirculated within our friend group before she'd even taken it down, and the reaction split people in ways I hadn't predicted. Maddie, mortified that her old group chat had somehow been the source, called me crying, apologizing for something that wasn't really her fault, insisting she'd never have sent it to Brielle directly. Connor, surprisingly, became one of my steadiest allies through it, telling anyone who brought it up that a private mistake from 18 months ago didn't erase 2 years of documented cruelty, that the two things weren't the same weight, even if Brielle wanted them to be. Brielle, for her part, made one last move that finished what little credibility she had left. 2 days after the post, she showed up at the restaurant where Heather worked, during a Friday dinner rush, and confronted her in front of customers, accusing her of leaking the screenshot on purpose out of jealousy over Jordan, who Heather had, in fact, started seeing casually that same month, something I hadn't even known until that moment. Heather's manager asked Brielle to leave. She didn't. Not until 2 other servers walked over. The video someone filmed on their phone made its way around our group within hours, and whatever sympathy her post had briefly bought her evaporated by the following morning. The complications didn't stop at the friend group. Brielle and I had shared a lease on a storage unit since college, a holdover from when we'd moved apartments together junior year, splitting $41 a month for a 10 by 10 unit neither of us had visited in over a year. She texted me 2 weeks after the screenshot, demanding I empty my half by the end of the month or she'd donate everything. Her words, like she was doing me a favor. I drove out there alone on a Sunday afternoon in November and found half my boxes already gone, including a crate of yearbooks and a box of photos from a trip we'd taken to Mexico the summer after sophomore year. Things that had been mine, not hers, gone without a word. I didn't fight her on it. By then I understood that fighting Brielle for anything just gave her another stage. My mother, the same one who'd asked at Easter if I was doing okay emotionally, called me the week the screenshot circulated, having heard a secondhand version of the story from a family friend whose daughter was still in our old group chat. She didn't ask about the screenshot itself. She asked why I'd never told her about any of it, the years of small humiliations, the confrontation at Brielle's apartment, any of it. I didn't have a clean answer for her. I think I'd gotten so used to minimizing it for Tyler's sake, for the friend group's sake, for the sake of not seeming dramatic, that I'd minimized it for my own family too, until even my mother only had half a picture of what I'd been carrying for 2 years. We talked for almost 2 hours that night. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years, and it came, like most honest things that fall, out of wreckage rather than anything planned. I didn't feel triumphant watching it. I want to say I did because it would make for a cleaner story. The villain finally getting exactly what she deserved in front of an audience, the same way she'd built her cruelty in front of audiences for years. Mostly what I felt was tired, and underneath the tired, something close to grief, for a 6-year friendship that had curdled so slowly I hadn't noticed the smell until it was unbearable, and for the version of myself who'd once believed Brielle was simply loud and fun, not cruel, not calculating, just a big personality I didn't know how to share a room with gracefully. Brielle tried one more thing before she gave up entirely. She messaged Tyler's mother on Facebook, a woman she'd met maybe 4 times in 2 years, mostly at holiday parties, claiming she felt it was her moral responsibility to share what kind of person her son was dating. She attached the screenshot again, along with a paragraph about loyalty and honesty that read like it had been drafted and redrafted for maximum damage. Tyler's mother, to her credit, called me directly instead of believing a stranger's framing of a stranger's mistake. "I've known you for 3 years, she told me over the phone, her voice steady in a way that reminded me of Tyler's. "I know what kind of person actually shows up for this family at Thanksgiving and who doesn't. This doesn't change that." She forwarded me the message herself, unprompted, so I'd know exactly what had been said about me behind my back. It was, strangely, one of the kindest things anyone did for me that whole fall. A mother-in-law I wasn't even engaged to yet, choosing to verify instead of assume. There was a night, about 10 days after the screenshot, when I sat on my bedroom floor with an old shoebox of photographs Brielle hadn't managed to take from the storage unit, mostly pictures from freshman year, the 2 of us at 18, awkward and unfinished, grinning at a camera neither of us knew yet yet how complicated we'd eventually become. I cried for almost an hour, not because I missed who she'd turned into, but because I missed who I'd thought she was for those first 2 years, before any of the rest of it started. Grief doesn't always wait for the people worth grieving. Sometimes it just shows up for what you believed was true, even after you've learned it wasn't. Tyler came back on the 5th day. He showed up at my apartment with 2 coffees, mine with oat milk, and sat across from me at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd once cried, alone, after that argument at Brielle's apartment 2 years earlier. We talked for 3 hours, not about Brielle, about us, about the 18 months I'd spent carrying something I should have set down sooner, about trust, and how it isn't a single decision but 100 small ones. The same way Brielle's cruelty hadn't been one cutting remark, but 2 years of them, stacked, until the weight became unbearable on both ends. We didn't fix everything that night. Some things take longer than one conversation, longer than one apology, however honest. But he stayed. And in the weeks that followed, something between us got rebuilt on steadier ground than it had stood on before, because for the first time in 3 years, there was nothing left unsaid between us. No performance happening at our expense in front of a room full of people who didn't know what they were watching. There was one more piece of fallout, smaller than the rest, but the one that stuck with me longest. Brielle taught yoga part-time at a studio off Earl Street, a job she'd held for almost 2 years and genuinely loved. One of the few things about her life that had never seemed performed. A regular at the studio, someone who'd been in our extended friend circle for years without me realizing how closely she paid attention, saw the restaurant video and recognized her instructor's face in it. She mentioned it to the studio owner, not maliciously, just in passing, the way people mention things. Brielle lost 3 regular clients that month, people who'd booked private sessions with her for over a year and simply stopped without explanation. I didn't orchestrate that. I want to be honest about that because it would be easy to take credit for it and I won't. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a small, ugly satisfaction when Heather mentioned it to me over the phone, the kind of satisfaction I've had to sit with and examine since, the kind that doesn't say anything especially flattering about who I was capable of becoming that fall. It's been 8 months since that couple's party. I'm 25 now. Tyler and I moved in together in February, a 2-bedroom near the same coffee shop where we met, and some mornings I still order the wrong thing on purpose just to watch him correct me, smiling, the way he did the very first week we met. Brielle moved to Phoenix that winter, according to people who still keep tabs on her, though I'm not one of them anymore. I heard she's doing fine. I hope that's true. I don't wish her badly the way I once thought I would, now that the dust has settled, though I won't pretend I miss her either. Heather and Jordan are still together, 8 months in now, and there's a strange comfort in watching something good come out of a season that otherwise felt like wreckage from start to finish. Maddie and I are closer than we were before any of it, the kind of closeness that only comes from someone watching you at your worst and staying anyway. Connor still brings it up sometimes, half joking, asking if I want to go scorched earth on anyone else who needs it. I always tell him no. Once was enough to teach me what it costs. What I've learned, the thing I keep coming back to whenever I tell this story, is that revenge feels clean in the moment and complicated in the morning. I got the apology I deserved, eventually, in the form of a friend group that finally saw what I'd been seeing for years. But I also got dragged into the same mud I'd thrown, because that's what mud does once you start throwing it. It doesn't stay aimed at just one person. I don't regret saying something finally after 2 years of staying quiet to keep the peace. I regret how long I let it build before I did. Nice had been permission, I told myself that night at the trivia game, and I was right. But somewhere between standing up for myself and tearing someone else down for sport, I crossed a line I didn't notice until it was already behind me. The version of this story where I just set a boundary and walked away clean doesn't exist. The real version is messier, and it cost me something too, a friendship I'd had since I was 18, even if that friendship had stopped being good for me long before I admitted it. Some nights I still think about the freshman year version of her, the one who used to leave the porch light on for me when I came home late from the library, before any of it curdled into what it became. I don't know exactly when that girl disappeared, or if she was ever entirely real to begin with, separate from the parts of her that needed an audience to feel like she mattered. I'll probably never know. That not knowing is its own small grief, one I've stopped trying to resolve. She spent years humiliating me in front of the person I loved most, and I spent a few months making sure everyone she'd ever tried to impress saw exactly who she was. I got what I wanted. I'm just not sure, even now, that getting it was the same thing as winning.